Hey, what's up everybody, this is Muth24, and today I'm taking a look at the Medicos Super Action Statue figure from the Jojo's Bizarre Adventure line for Muhammad Avdol and Magician's Red. This is part of the Stardust Crusaders line that I've had for quite a while, and I kind of want to space these out just to make them more interesting to watch every once in a while instead of, doing them boom, boom, boom right in a row there. This is the last one of all the figures that I have completed at the moment. I do have Killer Queen, but I'll do Yoshikage Kira with that later on when I get him. I wanted to do these all with the figure and the stands together. So, taking a look at the characters right off the bat, this very prominent orange and red colors going on here. Obviously, I have sort of the grayish, almost off-white color with Avdol's pants and his shirt and all that, but the orange jacket really stands out. The flames on the legs of Magician's Red there also very much pop, and I'll show off the textures of those in a little bit. We have some cool clear yellow and orange color effect there on the flames in his hand, and there's all sorts of different texture looks going on with the paint applications on sort of the skin areas of the Magician's Red figure, as well as the fabric look to Avdol's jacket, the sort of metallic look to his jewelry here and there, and the leather look to his boots, and so on and so forth. And much like with all the other figures that I've reviewed before, I think that the way that the paint applications work on these different textured looks is great. I really am glad that they went the extra mile to make those look as good as they could. Take a look at the boxes here. We have, kind of the same thing as previous figures that I've reviewed. Same pattern on all of them. But with Avdol's, it's sort of the black, yellow, and orange, and then Magician's Red, it's the red and orange, which Magician's Red box is obviously a lot brighter because of that. Spinning this around, we have Avdol there on the side, a few different poses on the back. And I'll talk about it more in a little bit, but Avdol's a little bit harder to pose than some of the other figures because of the fact that, one, he's a little bit bulkier figure, and two, his jacket sort of restricts motion more so than the others. There we have Magician's Red. We have, again, different poses there on the back, and a list of all the accessories it comes with. And same thing on that side. Now, I think it is worth mentioning that since he has a bigger box there, yes, Avdol is one of the more expensive Stardust Crusaders characters. He's not real pricey, but I recall when I picked him up from Ami Ami that Polnareff and Kakyoin were both considerably cheaper than Avdol. Avdol's more in the price range of what I paid for Dio and Jotaro, whereas Magician's Red is about the same price as any of the other stands. So when you're going for the stands, those are pretty much the same price across the board. The characters that use them, those can vary just by the sheer size of the figure and how many accessories they come with. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you're looking to get the whole Stardust Crusaders lineup there. I have all of them, obviously, except for Joseph, who is a little bit more expensive because he does come with Iggy, but then you don't have to buy a separate stand for him. But looking at this character up close, again, some great work on the paint apps there on the back, on his face, and all the different textures going on there with his hair and the bandana and the jewelry and all that. This is sort of a softer plastic for the little necklace earring deal there. So it should stay on just fine. You shouldn't have any problems with that, bending and possibly coming off at some point. In terms of posability, we have what looks like it should be a joint here at the shoulder. It's actually not. I think it's just where they attach the arms into. But there's a socket here that will allow to rotate 360 at the shoulder. And you can see that there's a ball joint there. It's a little bit more visible than on some of the characters, but the fact that the shoulder comes up over that does disguise it pretty well. The elbows can go up and down there, and you can get some rotation back and forth, but this is kind of what I'm talking about with his jacket restricting movement a little bit, is these sleeves are so far down that it kind of hinders much more movement than that. As far as the wrists go, you can get them to flip back and forth like that, you can get them to rotate back and forth, no problem, and there's a peg inside the hand, so if you want the hand itself to rotate 360, no problems there. The head can bob up and down, can rotate 360 if you want it to, because like I said, that necklace is not going to give you any trouble there. And you can kind of get it to wobble side to side a little bit, which is cool. The torso, you can get some motion back and forth for him to, like, bend over or bend backwards or what have you. Side to side a little bit, again, with the jacket being so tight around his upper torso, not going to be able to do a whole lot with that. The lower torso here at the waist does a lot better job of rotating around than the upper torso there. The legs, you can get them to, wiggle around like that, no problem. Bend at the knees, about 90 degrees. His upper pant leg there is a lot thicker, so you can't get him to do quite the bend like you could with Polnareff or Kakyoin. You can get the ankles to go back and forth, no problem. Can get those to rotate 360 just fine. Got a little bend here at the toe. And that pretty much does it in terms of... Oh, actually, I forgot the flap on the back of the jacket here does move a little bit. It kind of just falls back into place. The only thing I can see with that is if you had one of his legs back already, it could kind of kick it up like a kickstand almost. But for the most part, I don't really see the need to have that move. It's sort of the same thing with Jotaro's jacket, that it's just sort of there for the sake of, if you wanted to have a pose where it needed to be stuck back, you could, but by and large, there's no real reason for that to even be there, though it is a nice little addition. In terms of Magician's Red, though, I mentioned before how nice the paint applications on this were. His figure's a little bit thinner than I remember him being depicted in the anime, or at least the current anime run, but that's just fine by me. Maybe it was just the angle that they had him drawn at, where he looked more beefed up, more muscly. But there is some really good muscle definition here on the figure. You can see sort of where his pecs jut out and his collarbone there, his abs going down, even the back here, very well defined, really cool looking. The face as well is really cool. It's a little bit harder to see on camera here because it's a darker red and it doesn't stand out as much against itself, but there are some cool streaks here behind the eyes and even bags underneath the eyes a little bit. The mouth, rather the beak, does in fact open up. If I can get it to cooperate, there you go. And you can see there's some different colors inside of there. And you can get to go open quite wide if you have his head back all the way. But even when it's forward, it still opens quite a bit, which is pretty cool. So the head itself can go back pretty much as far as you want it to. The neck does allow it to appropriately do the sort of chicken bob motion. And then you can rotate it 360, no problem. Can get to wobble side to side a little bit. There's not a whole lot of restriction up here by the neck. You can get the shoulder to rotate 360, no problem. There's a more free joint here underneath the shoulder, so that can rotate 360. The elbow can rotate quite a ways around, can bend pretty much 180. There's not a whole lot of restriction there. And then the wrist can rotate 360, again, wiggle around and all that. The upper torso can wobble around, can rotate a fair amount. I think if you go all the way around, it's probably going to risk kind of popping out of the socket there, but the lower torso can similarly rotate quite a ways. The legs at the waist here, not quite as great of motion as the actual Avdol figure, unfortunately. Part of that's because of the texture itself. It's a little bit harder to get them to move. You can get them to go back and forth like I'm showing here, but going out to the side, that's about it. The top of this flame is going to bump into itself. And similarly with the lower part there underneath the knee, the flames are going to bump into the upper part of the leg, so you can't get a whole lot there. There is an optional leg part, though, that I'll show afterwards. Actually, it's the one that comes on the character in the box, as opposed to this one. And with these ones on, the rotation below the kneecap is not that great either. But the upper torso, on the whole, regardless of which variants you're using, does work really well in terms of posability. Now for Magician's Red, these are the legs that I was talking about, and they do slide in no problem with this little rectangular peg here. Pops in actually relatively quick, and it's kind of weird because I thought it'd be really loose, but it holds on just perfectly there, which is great. It doesn't get much more rotation or bend at the knee there, but at the ankle you do have the back and forth, you do have the rotation side to side, and of course the little flip here at the toe. In terms of the accessories for Magician's Red, you have these alternate hands, kind of similar to the ones with the flames in them. Of course, there's no flame in the middle, but they are sort of with that relaxed grip, almost claw pose there. Then you have these flat palm hands. And with all the hands, there's a really great amount of detail in terms of the fingernails and sort of the wrinkles along the hands and all that. Great job on the paint apps there as well. And then you have some sort of typical closed fist punching hands. You also get some of the sound effect parts to put on the back of the action base. I don't plan to use these that much, but if you wanted to, they are really cool. Something very different that you don't see with a lot of action figures these days, and are similar to the ones that come with Hierophant Green and Kakyoin. You also get a couple for Avdol as well. And on all of these you have the black paint app kind of jutting out a little bit there from the clear backdrop, which I think is a nice little touch. Not something they had to do, but is a nice little addition. For Avdol, I've actually swapped out his face, and I don't know how well it shows up on the camera, but he's using sort of his less serious smirking face there. He has the pointing finger on one hand and the thumbs up on the other one. And for comparison, here is the more serious face. It's got all the same accessories and stuff on it, it's just the expression's a little bit different. He also comes with a bunch of different hands. Here we have the closed fist punching hands that are kind of included with every single figure as far as I can tell. We have the relaxed palm hands that I had on him earlier. We have the other open palm hands are a little bit less relaxed, but still not like fully gripping anything. We have the other thumbs up hand that goes on the other arm. And then of course there are the open palm hands to kind of match Magician's Red there if you wanted him in like a defensive pose with his arms crossed or something. The weird thing about this figure compared to every other JoJo's figure I've gotten is that I've shown off before how you get the same action base per figure, and usually you have one piece with the peg and another piece that's just blank, and you put Avdol on one, and then you'd have another for Magician's Red. I don't know if it was just an error with the ones that I got, or if this is something that's the case with all the Magician's Red and Avdol figures, but I ended up getting one with the peg and the normal clear piece there, and then one with two clear pieces, no peg. That's a little problematic because, say I had just gotten one of these guys, I wouldn't have a way to put the other one up on an action base. Thankfully, with these figures, much like they had with Kakyoin, there's this extra connector piece that's included with both of them, and what it's meant to be is that you can put the actual character's joint on one side and the sort of sound effect piece on the other. These little split connector things come with both figures, so what I ended up doing was just kind of rigging it so that both of the figure pegs were connected to the same spot on the action base. A little less ideal than with the other characters because I can't have them splayed to different sizes much, but I can still get Magician's Red here up on the back, sort of floating behind Avdol like he's up in the air, and it still looks decent enough. It's just not quite as cool as having them sort of at different angles or at different heights with the joint and all that when compared to, you know, Polnareff or Jojo or Dio or Kakyoin. So it's a little unfortunate. I do think that was sort of a random chance with mine. I don't think that's common with all of them because the back of the box for both Avdol and Magician's Red do show the typical action base setup. So I'm kind of hoping that was just mine, but you know, do be aware if you order this guy, that might be something that's more common than I'm aware of. So although Avdol's posability is not as great as some of his Stardust Crusaders counterparts, the posability on Magician's Red I think kind of makes up for this, and the general detail on both these figures is great as a set. I think if you're going to get Avdol, you might as well get Magician's Red with him because it seems kind of silly to just get him and then not have as great a posability, as well as nothing to sort of pose behind him. But that said, I do think that these are still really solid characters in terms of their design, in terms of their figure representations here. That said, you won't be getting quite as much in the way of posability out of them as a whole, mainly because of Avdol's restrictions on his upper torso and Magician's Red's restrictions on his legs. If you are going to be displaying these guys in sort of a lineup with all the other Stardust Crusaders characters or with your whole JoJo's collection on a shelf, not that big of a deal. It'll still look really nice alongside Jojo, Polnareff, etc. But that said, if you're looking for something that's highly posable, that you can change up a lot, you're not going to find that so much here. So that's something to keep in mind when you are looking at this figure. Even though it is a really solid representation of Avdol and Magician's Red, the posability and the freedom to move it around is not there quite as much as the other Star Wars Crusaders characters, as well as other JoJo's characters from the Super Action Statue line. So that's pretty much it for this review, and with that, I will see you guys next time.